You're listening to Live Wild Radio, the part-time adventure podcast.
Join us as we explore how outdoor adventures build mind, body, and spirit.
So I have a little story before we get to this episode. One of the things I hate the most in life is throwing up. And it turns out throwing up made me feel better just now. But like, so if people want to know what I am a coward about, right? It's not big climbing, like it scares me, but I do it. You know, been in a fair, mix of fist fights in my day. Faced, bears and all that kind of thing. Throwing up scares the shit out of me. Luckily, I didn't have to stick my fingers. It just sort of, my body went out. And now I actually feel 1,000% better. So
I told you.
You know, whereas an hour ago, before our guest got here, I was lying there going, maybe you just do an episode by yourself, and now I feel fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are recording
live from Saranac Lake.
Yeah.
In the Adirondacks.
And our guest today, Scott Van Laer. If you follow him on Twitter, it's ADK Ranger.
Correct.
And Scott is an Adirondack State Park Ranger who, if I'm not mistaken, you've got the coolest job because you're in the High Peaks. It's one of the areas you cover.
Yeah, I think for the Forest Ranger force in New York State, because we're all over New York, but Adirondacks are definitely the desirable location.
Yeah.
When I started as a ranger, I did have to do 3 years on Long Island.
Okay.
And
really?
that was pretty miserable. There's only 4 forest rangers on Long Island, whereas there's 50 in the Adirondacks. Nice. But there is a small section of land there called the Pine Barrens that the state does actively protect.
So you grew up in this area.
Yeah, in the Adirondacks. I was more in the southern Adirondacks, but I definitely grew up in the Adirondacks and on the job because my father's a forest ranger. He got hired in 1977, and he was in the Catskill Park, which is in the southern part of New York State. Mm-hmm. A bit smaller, but the same recreational type activity. And then in the mid-'80s, when I was just before becoming a teenager, transferred to the southern Adirondacks and grew up here, spent most of my time here, went to college at Paul Smith's, which is the only 4-year school in the Adirondacks. And then I did 3 years in Alaska before I became a forest ranger in New York.
Oh, cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Were you doing forestry work in Alaska?
I did wildlife work. I was a wildlife tech.
What part of Alaska?
I was in Fairbanks because I was going to college there, but I did wildlife work on the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. I just did one season. I was a park ranger in one of the state campgrounds there as well, too.
Basically, we wanted to have you on because Adirondack State Park, and more specifically the High Peaks region, where we keep coming back to, is one of the coolest places on the east. Just a quick little rundown, 46 mountains over 4,000 feet. And I would argue because there's a few that aren't actually 4,000 feet, and then there's others that they don't count. So,
right, like McNaughton doesn't count.
Yeah. And Yard Mountain I don't think counts because it's too close to Big
Correct,
Slide.
Yeah.
But that's a neither here
It's
nor
still
there.
a good bucket list.
Oh, yeah. But then you have thousands of kilometers of trails, canoeing, what a lot of people wouldn't think about here, but there's some amazing canoe routes, and a lot of campsites out on islands. I think of the Dax as a 3-season destination, from the standpoint that spring here sucks. Until everything's melted, it's just muddy.
Well, we do call it mud season.
Yeah.
For locals, that's what we call it, mud season. So,
So I've always sort of looked at it as, summer, fall, winter, and until the snow melt has happened, because it's just not worth it.
Well, our winter can go well into April.
Yeah. And usually by end of May, it's okay.
Yeah.
You might still, a few years ago, going up Marcy, we had micro spikes on in shorts.
Yeah.
Because you have all these sheet ice on the north side. It just hasn't been hit by the sun, so it hasn't melted yet. So that kind of stuff is kind of cool.
Yeah, there's a little depression on Marcy called the Bowl that you can see, and it's always the last spot to hold on snow. And one of the rangers up here, before my time, Pete Fish, who's kind of a bit of a legend, he would say that in 4th of July weekend, people would hike skis up and just to make 1 or 2 turns in the bowl. There was snow, and I haven't seen snow in the bowl into July in my time, maybe once or twice, but during his time it was a regular thing.
Yeah. Well, that's actually an interesting thing because it's been 21 years you've been in this park.
Yeah. As a ranger, yeah.
Yeah. So over that time, because you get so many people saying that, like, climate change isn't a thing and da-da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, have you seen a change in, like, what the winters are like? And basically, how the weather and the climate in this area has been affected.
Yeah, our weather, the winters have been kind of weird here, and we haven't had the extreme cold temperatures as much. Mm-hmm. But there's definitely been a weird pattern. Normally, I'd say it's like 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 years that we'll have snow by Thanksgiving, U.S. Thanksgiving, so end of November. But the thaws in January. It's like so rare now that we when we get our snow that we hold on to it until March or April. So that's the biggest thing. Is our January thaws, our melts are more common, seem more frequent.
Okay, and that's because back at home, like we're from Ontario, we don't get any snow accumulation, right? Like it's almost like the whole temperature band has bumped up enough that the highs now are all slightly above zero.
Yeah.
Like when it does get warm, which means all the snow's gone. Because I've even noticed it because, and obviously some winters are just more precipitation than others. But like I remember, I don't remember what mountain it was, but, trudging in my snowshoes up, one of the trails, and the little yellow marker was at my knees, right? That's how much snow you had.
And we still do get that, That's the thing is can be surprising to people because they'll be living down at a lower elevation and they're experiencing all those things. And they come here and they're going up several thousand feet, and it's like, whoa, it is winter here.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that surprises people maybe more so now that winter's not as prevalent everywhere.
Yeah.
Because we still have it in the mountains. And it's still, the snow is accumulating rapidly still there, and people are surprised. So that could be somewhat of a change because we still see the people coming up in winter and hiking in blue jeans and just totally.
Oh yeah, and those rubber duck boots or whatever those boots that was wearing.
Bogs.
Yeah,
like
on Wright's Peak a couple of years ago, we were like with our spikes.
Yeah,
and
a girl.
How the heck did you get up there?
We've got snowshoes and crampons, and I even had my ice axe on, even though the couple of the people I had with me weren't. They're not mountaineers, but when you got a couple of dicey sections, I could go up, make a belay them up the dicey section, and so this is all the shit we have. We get to the. It's exposed, so you're just down to your boots again because you're scrambling around on the rock. And there's a girl in like yoga pants, bogs, didn't have snowshoes,
puffy, yeah.
And she's like, "It's really cold up here." It's like, yeah, like we're having like probably like 60 or 80 mile an hour gusts.
What are you doing? Yeah,
like what are you doing up here? Like it's like okay, well, and we purposefully waited for them to go first. So then at least I know they're in front of me, and I don't, because it's one of the things you run into when you're sort of the most experienced person around. If something goes wrong, you're going to be the one pitching in and helping. Like I've had to do that, and I don't mind, but I've had to do that a ton of times over the years, and you're like, this is preventable, and because obviously. Unless somebody's got like a satellite communicator in an area like that, there's no cell reception. I guess maybe there's a little bit on top of Algonquin.
Cell coverage is actually pretty good nowadays. We get a lot of calls that do come in by cell phone. It's been improving quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Because I know we were down.
It depends what your carrier. So this does come up a lot with Canadians coming down.
Really?
So if you have Verizon, it's pretty good. There's spots. There's good sections where it's pretty reliable. Nothing I'm encouraging people to rely on. Is that safety net. But it depends on what your carrier is. So a lot of those other carriers do not work well in the Adirondacks.
Yeah. So maybe if AT&T isn't as good, because that's what I have. Yeah. Yeah. When you roam down here, that's what you have.
Yeah.
Because we were passing pitch off in the Cascade Lakes. And
that is a bit of a dead zone, though.
yeah, like that was just nothing.
Yeah, that's a steep valley, you know.
Yeah.
You know, unless we put an antenna on top of Cascade, you're not going to get good coverage along the road there. That's a tough line of sight.
But that it's one of those things that's kind of cool because you're on a major road, like 73 is like, you know, busy road, and literally no cell reception.
Yeah, well, even on the Northway on 87, which you're not taking, you know, but going south here, the main entry into the High Peaks, exit 30, on the interstate, there's long sections where it's still pretty poor coverage. They had emergency phones every mile or so for quite a long time. Actually, there was one point, it's a while ago now, I bet it's a decade or more, but there was a older couple that went over the bank in their car, and they wound up perishing just from the elements because they couldn't get out themselves. They were older, and their cell phone didn't work.
But these emergency phones are not there anymore, are they?
I think they're not. I think they're gone now.
Yeah.
But I should know that.
Yeah.
Let's rewind. So you're a forest ranger for the department, DEC. What does that stand for?
Department of Environmental Conservation.
I should have known that.
Yeah.
So Scott, tell us, what do you do and what area does that cover?
Okay. So I'm a forest ranger in the High Peaks region of the Adirondacks, but I'm actually speaking to you tonight because I'm the director or president of the Forest Ranger Union. So that allows me some more flexibility to meet with people and press and do stuff like this. So the things I'm talking about tonight, these are not the views of the Department of Environmental Conservation. I'm speaking on behalf of the union and as a union delegate.
Okay.
So there's my disclaimer. We're good to go now.
Yeah.
So what exactly does your role as a forest ranger involve? What are the different components to that?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting how the job evolved here in New York with the forest rangers. If you go to the U.S. National Park Service, you see different kinds of rangers, interpretive rangers, climbing rangers, law enforcement rangers. We're a small group here, and we encompass all of that. It's just one type of forest ranger, just forest rangers, but we do three primary things. We do stewardship, which includes the law enforcement, so we're the stewards of the land, educating the public going out there. We do the search and rescue, and we have about 350 a year statewide. In the High Peaks region here, just one small area, we have 100 a year. And then we also do the wildland fire.
100 a year rescues?
100 a year search and rescue incidents in
Gotcha.
High Peaks, yeah.
Okay.
And
Is it busier in the summer or the winter?
Oh, it's definitely busier. We have more incidents in the summer, but the ones in winter are more epic.
Right.
It involves more difficulties, more staff.
Gotcha.
Bigger challenges for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, because in the summertime, you run into the thing. It's like you get a few people come in, help the person.
Yeah.
And if they had to sit there for a while, they don't freeze to death.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even an exaggeration.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a few of those. So law enforcement, stewardship, search and rescue. What was the third?
And then wildland fire.
Okay.
So any forest fires. And we're involved with the federal system as well, so we also have the opportunity to go out west, California, other states, to assist them on fires.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I guess that's part of the thing, as in your role in the union, is you're advocating for more rangers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. In my father's time, when he was working here in the 80s and 90s, there were actually 10 more forest rangers in the Adirondacks than we have today. And in that time, we've actually added 1 million acres of land statewide, most of it in the Adirondacks. So we've added more land, and with that comes more people, more use, more search and rescue. So we've been really struggling the last 15, 20 years. The last 10 has been really significant. The number of search and rescue incidents has really gone up. And it's had a major impact on our lives and our jobs. And it's almost like we're held hostage by the number of search and rescue incidents we have. Because even when they don't occur, like this was President's Weekend, holiday weekend here, and I was just kind of in the front country, just in the truck with my gear ready to respond because there was only 2 of us working. And what that does, that takes away from a lot of the backcountry work that I used to do. So I used to spend a lot of time hiking and camping and staying at our outpost.
Gotcha.
And that has really diminished. So, and that has an effect on the resource too, because I'm not interacting with the public. I'm not enforcing all these regulations we have, meeting with people at their campsites. So that's one thing we've been pushing for in the union, is to try and get more staff, actually advocating for a loss in pay, because we are overtime eligible and we work between generally between 500 and 1,000 hours of overtime a year. So we would just like a little more staff to do a better job, do better job service for the public and for protecting the resource.
From your father's time into now, 1 million plus more acres, more visitors. How many more visitors ish? Do you know?
Yeah, that
or what it is today?
Yeah, that is. It's tough to say. We do have stats that Cascade is a great example, and I'm trying to do this off the top of my head, but that is up, several 100%. So on a very busy weekend in the summer, we'll have say 1,200 people that'll hike just one mountain here.
Yeah.
So early on when I first came here, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people a year that would hike Cascade. Now you're talking 20,000 or more.
Wow.
Yeah, because Cascade's one of the ones that it's got some steepness to it in places, but it's not a long.
No, but the summit is amazing.
Yeah.
But what you're getting stuck with, because we really noticed it in the fall, is you're having to do the ticketing on the street, right?
Well, the parking was a huge issue this year, and I'd never had that before. Because of the tremendous amount of use that's occurred here, they implemented a parking ban along the shoulder of 73, that State Route 73 corridor. And with that, all these no parking signs they put up. And, we got stuck doing the enforcement for that. We're police officers. It's part of our job. We get it. It's not the cool part.
No, but it's taking you away from what really matters.
Yeah, so this year we wrote over 500 parking tickets. And that's really in just a few months, like in the winter now, the infrastructure, the amount of parking spots, we can keep up with the use. But from June, July, actually May until into October on the weekends, our infrastructure does not keep up with use. Yeah. So we have fewer parking spots and we have people with cars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there are like a couple of spots where there's like shuttles that run in the summer.
To the garden, we have a shuttle that goes from Marcy Field and runs up into the garden parking lot. And the state, to their credit, is now purchased some buses, and they're going to have a shuttle system this year on 73. So we'll see how that goes. It's a good step.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things everybody always touts. Like, it's great that the public is coming here and recreating like never before, but there are side effects to it. And you've been on our trails here. They're different than other places. We were talking before going on air about Pacific Crest Trail, about how everything's cut. What are our trails like here? They're 150 years old, and they were the easiest route to the top. So they were fall lines, they were drainages, and they weren't designed with switchbacks and in a way that was sustainable.
Yeah, because the trails in the DAX, and this is the best way for people to think of them, is think of like probably some like drunk old prospector who's wasn't doing so good prospecting, so he was given like a bucket of paint and said, paint blazes for a trail, and then he went, well, I don't have to cut down no trees, and literally rock slide on the side of the mountain, blaze, 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 blaze. Like, it is like, I love it, but it's a rude awakening to a lot of people. Yeah,
people say it all the time when they're coming from other parts of the country or parts of the world. They're like, wow, I can't believe how difficult the trails are here. I mean, I get that constantly. It surprises people.
Well, winter actually is easier.
It can be,
If you have a good amount of snow,
totally,
it fills in all of the boulders.
Yeah,
and the roots that are normally catching it, you can actually make better time.
Yeah,
if it's a hard packed trail in winter.
Because like when you're going downhill in the spring and summer, fall too, but literally it's jumping from boulder to boulder to boulder to boulder. Like, it's gnarly.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, it's physical exertion, right? You're still going uphill, but it's almost like somebody went out with a rake and graded the snow, because of everybody like hiking and packing it down.
It can be hard to convey to people sometimes when they're coming here for the first time in summer. And even for people who've hiked other places, like, they'll look on the map and they'll see that distance, and in their mind, okay, that distance will take me an hour. I'm like, no. You don't understand. You don't understand what you're about to get into. On average, that takes 2 hours for the average person. Yeah, so that can be a challenge as well.
Yeah, I almost think, and I'm glad I do this with my kids, I always scout out places first. Like today I saw in the Saranac Lake, Baxter Mountain. Perfect. That would be an... Sorry?
Baker.
Thank you.
Baker's perfect.
Baker Mountain. Perfect. Like we did Mount Joe. That was our first. And the second one was Indian Falls. We stayed in Marcy, up to Indian Falls. That's it. That was an epic time for them. Yeah. just a little at a time, especially with family when you want to make sure people are still turned on to the idea, but it's a little challenging. But, and you know what? As much as I've done Marcy and others stuff in the past, we did Seward the one winter, I'm glad we only did Hurricane. Like just because I was getting back into it, my knee, and in the end it was my hip flexor that kind of went. So it's always good to kind of ease into it to test yourself, what you're able to do here.
Yeah, it's so Hurricane is wide open on the top, but then there's a fire tower as well too.
Okay.
So you get a bit more heighty view.
And in the summer we have a volunteer that'll staff that on weekends.
Okay.
It's got a nice view. And we also utilize that as a repeater for our radio system. We have actually a really good radio system for the Forest Ranger service here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess that's the trick is like you got to get something up on like high points, basically.
Line of sight, yeah.
Because like with a lot of the rescues going on, if people are down in the valleys, they have a hard time getting out, like getting a signal out, but if you're up high, then, it dramatically increases that. Yeah. At work, I sell like Garmin InReaches and spots and all of these things.
He works at the equivalent of REI.
And the big thing that I stress to people is like, yeah, it keeps you safe, right? That's not the important part. And it's funny, this is like such a successful sales technique, is also it keeps the rangers who are going to come looking for you, right? When you don't show up, it keeps them safer because if they know exactly where you are, right, and you can communicate, well, then they're not like going down like fall lines and down ravines and all these different things that would increase risk. Because the more time you spend out there, the tireder you're going to get, the more likely somebody's going to get hurt, and that's just the search part. Well, if all you ever have to do is rescue because you know exactly where people are, that basically increases the safety for the rangers. And especially in an area like this where, because at any given time, like in the High Peaks, how many rangers are on duty?
Well, there's only 7 of us that cover it. So you could have, half that number. We don't have enough staff. We do not cover 24/7. So there's nobody on duty. Like right now as we're taping this, there's probably nobody on duty. And what they do is they're really dependent on us just answering the phone and responding. But we don't have any kind of on-call system. But we're a pretty small and dedicated force, and we've really made what's really a broken system kind of work. So this weekend, there are 2 or 3 people on. We should have enough people to cover like 2 shifts, like 16 hours a day on duty.
But that's just it. It's like, so now imagine you got a busy weekend where you get hurt, right? You're Joe Hiker, you get hurt. And then Sally Hiker, with her friends, she gets hurt. Well, whoever calls in first is kind of all hands on deck. They're coming for you.
I mean, we've had that happen, multiple incidents going on at the same time in a geographic area, and that is tough because, like you said, once resources are committed to one rescue, one incident, we may pull some away, but depends how far in they are. They may not. And then when that second incident arises in that same ranger district for us, those resources are coming from farther away. So that is an issue. So you're right.
So part of what I wanted to do on this podcast tonight is realizing that the population has increased so much and that the resources, from a forest ranging perspective, are so limited. What can the population do? Like, we love this area. Like, this is why we wanted to do this podcast. We love the area. We want to preserve it. We want to take care of it. But what do you say to people in all of this, whether it be preservation or safety, can we do?
Yeah, the best thing that people can do is to let the governor's office know that they want more forest ranger staff in the Adirondacks. That's really what it boils down to. That's the way to get done. And we've had really broad appeal and support from the public and other entities of the government, but it's just a tough time, and we haven't gotten to that point yet. But that's really the only way to get it accomplished is to get us into the governor's budget.
Is that Governor Cormos?
Correct.
Yeah. So all of our American friends, because as Canadians, we're not supposed to interfere with your like elections or stuff, or at least Ukrainians aren't. I don't know. It's tricky to follow.
Although I'm ready to take a picket sign, and I've never been more passionate about politics until now.
You know,
U.S.
You're not the only one.
Yeah. But one of the interesting things you'll run into is basically setting up the structure so that, in a sense, you're not needed as much, right? Because like the other piece is like educating people so they don't fuck up. Like excuse me. Running into like the amount of people I see when we're out on the trail that are ill-equipped, don't always have the best knowledge.
Yeah.
I think the more people that sort of get educated and trained, like it's almost too bad that there isn't like classes that people could take.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, there is. We call that doing preventative search and rescue. You know, so it's giving that message to prevent the search and rescue incident, and that's one of the things like we want to be out doing, and is being at the trailheads and on the trail, interacting with the public and spreading that message. But there's been all sorts of things talked about to try and get around this problem. You know, if you go to other park systems, you'll have to get permits and you'll meet with the rangers in advance. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that everybody loves about the Adirondacks is how open it is, right? Yeah, it's open 24/7. You come here, you need no permits for the most part, whether you're rafting or climbing or hiking. But that does come at a cost, and you can see that. We have more search and rescue incidents in most places because it is so open. And sure, the information is there for people that do the work, but it's not forced on them. You know, there's not a ranger at the trailhead that's given that information.
Yeah.
Do you think there should be a permit system?
I would like to see, personally, I'd like to see a permit system only to start with for camping in the backcountry. And I would like that because you have a finite number of campsites. You know, the High Peaks Wilderness is moving to designated sites only, and that will probably take effect next year. So if you only have 200 campsites, I just made that number up, but if you have that number of sites, I don't think it would be wise use to allow 300 people to go back to those sites. And we don't have a mechanism or an information exchange to prevent that. So when I go out other places, I love getting the permit for a backcountry site because I know it's a reservation system. Yeah. I go there, I got it. Right now, if I'm going to go into Marcy Dam, yes, there's a lot of spots, but I have no idea if there's 50 people there or 10. Yeah. So I think that would be a wise use because it would be, you have a finite number of campsites, so let's permit for those campsites. And you can only do it for the summer. You know, we're talking between May and October. And we have a online permit system that we use for our campgrounds. We could utilize that. So I would go there first. I'm not really... At this point, I would. You get this debate sometimes going on right now in a High Peak. Some people use the term overuse. There's overuse. All these people come in, it's overuse. And I'm not saying that's wrong. And you have other people say what we lack is infrastructure and staffing. So we have. It's not too many people. It's that there's not enough infrastructure. There's not enough parking. There's not enough shuttle buses. There's not enough rangers. That kind of thing. So that's kind of two ways of parsing the same problem and explaining it differently. And I'm not saying, well, I guess my point is that I tend to gear towards that we can manage the amount of use that I see coming in here. I believe we can with the appropriate infrastructure and the appropriate staff. So I don't really want to see permits to limit it at this time.
And when you say permit, it's just like a reservation system or that with money?
Well, some people, there's some, green groups and advocates that are suggesting we put a cap on the amount of people that are able to go into certain areas. And I'm not in favor of that at this time. You also see, ecologically speaking, clustering is good. Clustering is better for the environment. Spreading them around is not so good. Now, if you're getting into the existential wilderness experience for us, yes, I do not get a wilderness experience on Cascade with 600 people up there. But as far as protecting the resource, Yeah, clustering is good. It's good to have all those people there because that allows this other peak, that allows the Jay Wilderness and Hurricane to have much fewer.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like with the decks, like some of the rock stars get all the traffic because, Cascade gets a lot because it's very accessible. You'll get, I don't know, like based on the parking tickets, I would think a lot of people are going up Giant.
Yeah, well, by Cascade, there wasn't a no parking zone.
Yeah.
There wasn't an extensive one because they already had that guardrailed off. So they were kind of bringing it in waves. They're going to close the Cascade trailhead and move it to another spot in Hovenberg Center. But along Giant, that had a long mile section of no parking. So that's why most of the tickets were down there.
Yeah, because we run into the thing where when we were down there, because you stay at the Chapel Pond Outlet Climbers Camp.
Yeah.
And, the regular weekend hikers don't know anything about it. So, we get in, we park, and then we walk over, and it's just insane. Whether we're going to the beer walls or heading up Chapel Pond Slab, like the amount of like cars parked along there, like just the tickets alone would fuel the park.
Well, that is one of the issues is that a lot of provincial parks, state parks, there's a gate, there's money that's paid to go, and here it's free here.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why we have so little staff. We've been reaching out and working with other partners with ADK Mountain Club has done a great job. But I think that's the main reason why we don't have better staff and infrastructure because we're just not collecting money from it.
Yeah.
We're just not collecting money from the users.
I think you should. I don't think that, yes, you're putting in 500,000 hours. People could say, oh, that's money. I'm like, fuck that. That's your life.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable.
Because
how are you going to attract more people to come and do that, right? Especially in today's age. Millennials, they don't want to. They want to do it part-time.
Yeah.
From home.
Yeah. It's like you're going to be park rangers from home.
Yeah.
So let's talk about sort of some of the notable search and rescues.
Sure.
Because just as a both education and a hobby, I read from all over, like the American Alpine Association's accident guide every year. And I think it's like the Adirondack Almanack seems to have all of
the Adirondack Almanack does a really good job of posting them.
Yeah. And so it's the write-up of what happened, when the Rangers were called out, how they addressed it, kind of an assessment at the end of like what went good and what didn't and whose fault was it. Like this person should have been better prepared.
Yeah, we do put that in the report sometimes. Yeah. I'll occasionally, on my Twitter feed, put a photo of like somebody's footwear or something like that. And I've gotten a little pushback sometimes that I'm shaming, but I never actually say who it is. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the feed, you can see, we've had people in loafers, and it's just amazing what we'll see.
Well, yeah, because when you get people out here in flip-flops and...
Oh, my God.
Yeah. It's one thing, like, if you want to go...
No water or a small little...
Well, actually, the best I ever saw, I was coming down off of Marcy. It was like late May. And this really, like, heavy-set dude with, like, a matching basketball uniform on, like... LA Lakers or something, or maybe New York Knicks. I'm not big on the sports, but but it all matched. Wearing like Air Jordans.
Oh my God.
And he had a 1-gallon jug of water in his hand. Tank top. Like if you had a weather change, when those thunderstorms hit and it gets like hail and icing and, really cold, this guy's screwed. And you see that kind of thing over and over. And then
but you were going to talk about some epic search and rescue.
Yeah. Because what I figured, let's do a couple winter ones and then 1 or 2 summer ones, just so people can understand the difference. Mm-hmm. But with Saddleback, if I'm not mistaken, a fellow was descending it and slipped and broke his ankle or his leg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, basically, why don't you take off with?
Yeah, so it was in the middle of winter. and it was two hikers, and he was coming down the Saddleback ledges. So he's on the Great Range. He's going from Saddleback to Basin, and you really can't get farther away in the Adirondacks and still be on a trail. It's probably the most remote and difficult spots to get to. It's probably the most difficult and dangerous marked trail in the Adirondacks.
Well, it's also scary to do in the summer. It's the one I freaked out on. Anyway.
It's scary to do in the summer.
Yeah.
So they were descending that, which we don't recommend. We always tell people to go the other way. It's always easier to go up. You have more injuries going down, descending. So he didn't have one of them didn't have crampons on. He had microspikes trying to get down, and he slipped and fell and had a leg injury. Unstable leg injury, broken leg. And
so he basically went over the edge, right, and kind of slid down.
He slid down. I think they said he it was a fall of maybe 15 feet.
That's it?
10 to 15. Yeah, it doesn't take much. That'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So his partner, there was no cell coverage right at the base there because you're right deep in a spot. So his partner had to then climb a mile to get on the summit of Basin, which took some time. So that phone call came in, and there were a number of us working that day, and it's like, wow, this is the one we've been kind of dreading in terms of the location. And you have less daylight in the winter. We know immediately at the onset, by the time the call comes in, we know this is one that's going to take a day or more to get the person out because there's no helicopter available to us. If the weather was good, because of the weather, because the wind speed and the cloud cover.
Time of the year.
Yeah. So we can do a hoist operation, lower somebody on a cable and bring them up if the weather's good. But if it's windy, if it's too cloudy, that doesn't work. So we knew right away this was a bad weather day. So we started gathering up the resources, putting a plan into place, how we're going to go and get to that person. And we actually were going in through the Sable Club because that was kind of a roundabout way to go in, but it allowed us snowmobile access because you can't get to where this person is on a range by snowmobile. But going in through the Sable Club on this lake, we could come in by the area we were talking about before, coming in Haystack by Snowbird, then go over Basin. And so we had about 15 or so rangers heading in, but then there's all sorts of support staff. So our plan was that day is to let's get to them. It's late in the day. We're going to get up there with what we call our cold weather high mountain module, which is basically a 4-person North Face tent with the sleeping bags and enough food for day 2. We're going to get to that person, stabilize the injury, spend the night with them, and then get them out the next day because the rescue component of that is going to be intense. We're going to, you're between two mountains, so you either got to go up over the mountains or down through the woods through a drainage, a bit of an uncharted way. So we started up that way, and what made it epic for us is we had what we call an incident within an incident, meaning that one of our rangers actually got hurt going up Basin. That was a tremendous amount of ice flow on the trail that year because we talked about the weather, the thaw and refreeze. So there was just you needed crampons just for hiking on the trails, and we of course did, but we had someone that got hurt. So then there was 5 of us carrying all this gear up there. So now it was about 2 a.m. and we were near the summit of Basin. We have to take care of one of our own. So we start doing that. So we set the tent up. We take care of the other ranger. And then we're trying to regroup. So we're on the radio and we're calling down to the command post explaining what's going on. And remember that the rescue wave is coming behind us, but they're hours away. This is 2 a.m. now. And this accident already happened 10, 12 hours ago.
Wow.
So
what were the temperatures like?
It wasn't that bad. Yeah, it was around 0 Fahrenheit. I'd say with the wind, it was 15 to 20 below. Wow. If you were in an exposed spot.
And was that hiker that was hurt prepared? Like, were they backpacking or just hiking?
They were just hiking. They had good gear. They weren't prepared to spend the night.
Right.
And so we put the ranger in a tent, and then myself and another ranger, we called down and I said, "Is there any way the 2 of you can go and leave them behind?" And we just looked at each other. We were fearful that the person wouldn't make it through the night. We knew they didn't have enough gear to, they may have survived, but it was questionable. Not because of the leg injury, but because of the elements.
Yep.
So we each put a sleeping bag, a bivvy, and a sleeping pad in our pack and all of our regular gear. And we went on. So we were, not crazy amount of weight, but probably, 40 pounds or so. And we pushed up over a basin. And we actually had a hard time finding the trail in the middle of the night or getting towards morning because so much of it had blown in with snow. And that one can be difficult to find anyway from that side. So then we made our way over basin, over another false summit of basin, and then down to them. And now it's daylight. So now it's been 16 hours since the person got hurt, and we're arriving to them. I'll never forget seeing him. His partner was doing well. He was good. He walked up a ways to find us and bring us down to it. But when I saw the guy who was injured, it was almost like he was attached to the ground, like he was frozen into the ground.
Wow.
He was shivering, which was good.
Yeah.
I mean, because his body was still compensating. And he's just like, oh, man, it's so good to see you. And he just looked like he was frozen into the ground. And we're exhausted by this point ourselves. So, and we also got to take care of the other guy, his partner. Like, his partner had been taking care of him all night, giving him all his resources, keeping and going. That guy's going to sit here a while. We got to take care of him as well. So it's almost like you have two victims. Only one of them has a broken leg.
Right.
So we take a look at the leg and stabilize it, splint it as best we can. But what we really know we got to do is to take care of the cold challenge for him. So I actually had a blanket that has these heating pads on it, just like your hand warmers, just woven into the blanket.
Oh, wow.
So we whip that out, put that on him, get him into my 40 below sleeping bag, get him in a pad, get him in dry clothes, get him as comfortable as he can. And then we did the same thing with his buddy too, because his buddy had been up all night and been taking care of him. So that guy's got to sleep. They hadn't slept. So we put him in the other ranger sleeping bag. So now we got them stabilized, and it's morning, and the rescue teams are coming. Now it's waves, but these are rangers that live. This is a 6 million acre park, so some of these rangers drove 2 hours just to get to the trailhead.
Wow.
There's only 7 of us that live in this district, so we got nothing because we gave all our gear to them. So we put on our puffy coats, all our extra stuff.
Wait. So they've got all the stuff. So you're just in your puffy coats.
So we're just in our puffy gear.
Holy shit.
And we're just sitting there.
Shivering.
And yeah, occasionally we'd shiver and, you try and get some sleep, but then you'd start to, shiver yourself awake. And we sat there for about 6 hours, we cooked some food for them. And it was great. At one point, the guy with the broken leg, who looked like he was frozen to the ground when he arrived, how you doing? And he's like, man, it's getting hot in here. Like he has to zip down his sleeping bag to let some of the heat out, So they're doing well. But talking to the ranger with me, I said, man, I got to go because I'm at risk of becoming a victim.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. And the ranger with me was doing better than I was. He was hanging in there better. He really didn't want to go because we wanted to be part of the rescue team. Like we didn't want to leave because we're just taking care of the guy. The rescue part hadn't even arrived yet. That's a whole nother epic story.
Yeah.
And that was a hard part. And he came back with me, but we sat there for 6 hours. So then we backed out and left them alone. And we passed the other team of rangers coming in and advised them what was going on. It wasn't a long time that they were alone, but we actually had to leave them alone for a while and backed out of there. And I actually got a little bit of frostbite myself on my toes on that one. And I have really good mountaineering boots or Koflax. I've taken up for a year and stuff, but they're getting a little, like me, they got some age on them. And, when you spend that much money on gear, you're not maybe replacing it as quick as you should. So even in those mountaineering boots, I got a tad bit of frostbite myself. But then the next wave of rangers came in and did an incredible job of effectuating that rescue. They got him loaded up. They went down this drainage on a slide that's off a trail.
Chicken Coop, right?
Yeah, Chicken Coop Brook. Yep. So they took him out through there, and we had another wave of rangers came in from the Johnsbrook Valley, and were able to relieve them. And they hauled them all the way out, and they got out around midnight the next day.
Wow.
So it was about 36 hours to implement that rescue.
That was like 45 guys.
Yeah.
And what were people?
People, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is that thing for people to understand. Like, the rangers are going to do everything they can for you, but like this terrain is
God.
no joke, right? But it's one of those things where, as somebody who's fairly experienced of hiking this stuff, well, you guys aren't running ultralight gear, right? You got rescue gear.
No. Well, that's it. I mean, we had to carry a litter up there.
Yeah.
I mean, so we carried a big, heavy North Face tent. It was awesome, but we carried that up there. We're carrying even the sleeping bags. Like we're using synthetics. They're heavier but more durable. So yes, we're not going ultralight trying to peak bag. We're carrying in all the rescue gear. This rescue involved a lot of ropes, a lot of hardware. So it was very labor intensive.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, going up basin, it's one thing to do it with like 35 pounds of gear on, right? But like these guys like having to drag up a basket and probably a sled and
yeah, we used a polk, so I was pulling a polk up with the gear behind me for a ways. Then it got a little too steep, and then I transitioned because it does pull nicely.
Yeah.
But once you get too steep, and the way our
pulling you.
trails are, then I transitioned it all on our backs and went
yeah,
that way.
because that's the thing. It's like pulling a sled, with a harness and everything. It's awesome in Ontario.
Yeah,
Because
it's flat.
It's flat. You use all the frozen lakes as your freeway, and
But
just
what was
the
your
portages.
elevation gain from the bottom of the trailhead to like how much up and down, up and down?
Yeah, so it would have been the Upper Lake Anya Sable Club, which is it's above 1,000, and then obviously Basin, we were at 48.
Yeah.
So how long did that take you to get to him, ish?
Well, that's
With
the
all
thing.
that stuff?
It took us a long time. I'm not sure what time we left the warden's camp. The call came in early afternoon, so we didn't get to him for I think it was 14 or 16 hours from the time the call came in. When I'm
Right.
first notified,
Yeah. Get your stuff
roadside, the time to get to him it was that long.
Wow.
Yeah, because that sort of raises the thing. Like, obviously, you guys have to stay in good shape.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
And the job will do that too. It's, when I came on, I was 23 and, it's definitely a big part of it. And now I'm one of the older rangers. And I tend to I get past now. But yeah, that's a big part of it. The fitness level.
Yeah, because like you can't help anybody if you're fried,
Yeah.
And because that's the thing you run into. Like this terrain is so bloody brutal.
That's a big part of why, I'm retiring next year, and that honestly is a big part of it.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, just there's it's time. There's a lot younger rangers that are honestly more fit, and also with younger people, like you see the things they do, like their skill set.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like every generation seems to improve. Like they can climb higher and faster, and so yeah. But it's been a great run. But I definitely, you don't want to stay too long.
Yeah.
Like I tell that story, like I got a little bit of frostbite on my toes, but I don't want to be that one that
Gotcha.
has something worse. So
Yeah. Yeah.
25 years is plenty.
Yeah. But the reason why I asked how long did it take you to get up there is a point that if something happens to you, don't think they're going to be there in a couple of hours. Like you should always be prepared. And even for today's hike up Mount Baxter, you're like, hey, you got your fire kit, you got your this, you got your that. And I wasn't honestly thinking of any of that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're right.
And it's
normally
not
we're very
far-
particular about moisture
We
control.
actually get quite a few. We get quite a few rescues on out on Baker. We get
Do you really?
we get quite a few rescues on that. I think I had 2 or 3 this summer.
This summer.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. We had a couple carryouts there this summer. Yeah, I mean, people will take a trip and fall. Eddie Mountain.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that Mountain Joe not too long ago with no ice crampons or no.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
one on Mount Joe not long ago.
Yeah.
and then people going into the woods with no headlamps.
Oh yeah.
Well, this summer we had somebody that we had to rescue on consecutive nights because there's no headlamp because they didn't have it. So if you don't have people, you hear it all the time. Oh, I was only going to go for the day. Little distance. I didn't need one. But when it gets dark, it's dark. You're not moving. And even utilizing the light from your phone. But this year we had somebody, they get stuck and they couldn't move. And so it's a pretty easy rescue. You walk in, you give them a light, and you walk out with them. So we did that. Lesson learned. And then the next night we had a call
Same
again.
person?
The same person. The exact same situation. Hiked a different place. Took them longer than they thought. And they called. And it got even worse because we got to them. And of course they were embarrassed. But like, I actually did go and buy a headlamp. And they did. And there it was in their car.
Yeah, like...
So we had to rescue them for not having a headlamp. They did go out and buy one. And it still didn't make its way
All
to their
right.
pack.
So when you rescue somebody, do you pass over a bill to them? Like,
No.
You don't, eh?
Nope.
Like I know in New Hampshire they do the thing of like
New Hampshire does. Yeah.
their view, because I've talked to some rangers there, is if you had bad luck, it'll be a small bill or no bill. If you're an idiot, you're paying through the nose.
Yeah, that law doesn't exist here. That's the Hike Safe program in New Hampshire, and they will bill you if you're at fault, if you're negligent, and it's meant to be a deterrent and also a way to recoup funds. And they're not the only state that has it, but they're the state that's most active in actually enforcing it. So there's numerous other states, including Colorado, that has it on the books, but New Hampshire is actually enforcing it. Yeah,
interesting.
They're giving you a bill.
So here's the thing. Until I met Winston, I honestly did not ever think to have a headlamp. I just didn't. Mm-hmm. So say there's other people like me that don't know. Like, what would you recommend?
Like, are you big into the 10 Essentials?
10 Essentials is still really good. And we're using that in our PSAR preventative search and rescue. So, yeah, the 10 Essentials are good. And you can boil it down. But the amazing thing about headlamps is, like, I think about when I first started, and it was plastic and had 4 D cell batteries, 4 C cell batteries, and a cord that went around. And now it's like it weighs a couple of ounces.
And it will blind you if you.
And will blind you, and you can buy it. They're better and cheaper now than ever. Yeah. Like you don't really. It's nice to have the good ones, but you can buy anything for.
Well, when you think like something like the Black Diamond Revolt, right? It's rechargeable, now up to 350 lumens, and it runs on regular batteries too. Like Canadian, it's $69, right? A Black Diamond Spot is 49 Canadian, so like it's going to be cheaper American.
Yeah.
And they're waterproof and
there's no excuse not to have a light source with you.
No,
anymore.
you're absolutely.
There's none.
You're absolutely right. There's no excuse not to have one. But do you not? But there is. I do see the excuse of not knowing to have one. Do you see what I'm saying? Like somebody who's never ever done this before. I'm going fucking hiking. I'm not going to spend the day. That's not the intention. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh shit, and that happens to us all the time. There have been times that you've been caught without your headlamp. I'm like,
but I only get caught without my headlamp rock climbing.
yeah, exactly. Or I'm like, take my Garmin and Reach Explorer. You never know, and it's a good thing you did, because you guys are like, my friend Mrs. Plane. They were on an adventure. But I almost wonder if it would be helpful, a sign saying these are the 10 essentials. Like, seriously, do it.
Our trailheads, I think, lack some of the information. So for my vacations, I still recreate. I just go other places. I'm not hiking in the Adirondacks for my vacation. All over the place. Like this year we went to Olympic National Park. And so whenever I go somewhere else, I'm always checking to see how their information exchange is.
Sure.
And we lack on that in the Adirondacks. We definitely do.
Because you seem to be good with bears, like as far as the signage.
Right, Yes. I mean, the Adirondack Lodge, the H-Pick, that is awesome, but that's still just one spot in a 6 million acre park. So overall, I think we're still lacking in that.
Because it's always one of these things where there's the shit happens, right? I've fully equipped, but like when I went back and was rehiking the Appalachian Trail a few years ago, and coming down Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire, I just put my foot wrong, and it took 6 months for my ankle to heal. Like that was my trip was over. Like I hiked my ass out to the road after that, and it was just wet log, boom, right? I was never in danger because I had everything with me. Right, I put warm clothes on when I had stopped for a while, and taped up my ankle, blah blah blah. But that kind of thing can happen when you see the people out there where it's like jeans in the cold, like in the wintertime, no micro spikes, no crampons, no snowshoes. Like I know in the High Peaks wilderness, if there's more than 8 inches of snow, you have to have
snowshoes or skis.
Yeah.
And use them.
Because people who think you can just walk on this stuff, especially if you've had a fresh snowfall and nobody's cut the trail, like, you're gonna die. You're gonna wrench a knee.
Well, even a trail, even if the trail is packed in, we've had this a few times with people that have gotten lost, on a summit, so they don't have snowshoes on.
Mm-hmm.
But when they get lost and on trail and they're trying to navigate back towards a trail, they're not moving well without snowshoes.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of the other big one, is the young couple that get lost on Algonquin.
Yeah.
And Algonquin's like the second highest mountain in the High Peaks behind Marcy.
Yeah.
And it's rugged as hell. Like you're looking probably like 3.5 miles from
about 4 miles. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not super, super long, but you're gaining like 3,200.
Yeah, it's a really long 4 miles time wise. Yeah. Yeah. They started out with pretty good weather, but I believe that one was in December too, so the least amount of daylight. And he had pretty good gear. She didn't, but in his mind, I think he was like, I'll take care of her if something happens with my gear. And when they got to the summit, it was nice. They made it there okay, but then they got caught in a whiteout on the top, and they lacked the experience and skills to navigate in that. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of unusual what he did, but he basically just walked in an area that he could see. So if it's white out over here, but I can see, I can't see anything that way, but I can see 20 feet in front of me this way, so I'm going to go that way. Mm-hmm. Which doesn't make any sense, except I guess he felt like they had to move. And that took him on the wrong side of the mountain. And then they kind of slipped down an ice sheet on the one side. And then they only had one set of snowshoes that they didn't have to use all day. But so she had none. And then they got stuck and they got stopped and they just hunkered down, which was unusual for Algonquin because we do have patterns that we see people take when they get lost. Mm-hmm. And on Marcy, when people get lost in winter, they tend to hunker down in Snow Cave because they get pushed to the east, and the east face of Marcy, looking down at Panther Gorge, it's a wall.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get down. There's a couple narrow bands you can get down if you're not experienced. But for the most part, they snow cave, they spend the night, they're on the summit area.
And they're sheltered is basically it, right?
They just make a hole in the snow and spend the night.
Gotcha.
Because they lack areas to move. But Algonquin's different. They tend to, generally with the winds, they tend to wind up more towards the west. And there's a couple of big drainages that act as funnels and collects our wayward lost mountaineers. And so we have all this data that shows, okay, when somebody gets lost on Algonquin and this kind of wind, this kind of weather, they tend to show up here. So we had that information searching for them. So after that first night, I was up looking for them on the summit, and I couldn't find them. I'm yelling toward them. The tracks are blown over. My tracks were blown over 10, 15 minutes later.
Wow.
So I backtrack out of there, and I come down. Now it's the next morning. And, I figure, hey, just like everybody else, they're going to come out at Scott's Clearing, Scott's Lean-To. Mm-hmm. So I set up search assignments. I had all these rangers come in and go up this drainage and this drainage and this drainage and this drainage. Of course, I had people on the summit as well. But then I went home because I'd been up all night. And then I'm, late in the afternoon, okay, where'd you find them?
Yeah.
They didn't find them. And that was really shocking to me and stunning. And again, this was another day with no helicopter. We couldn't fly because the helicopter does work well above tree line in winter because you can see the tracks. Mm-hmm. They can signal.
Do they have like a forward-looking infrared on those?
We do, yeah.
Because then it's like, everything's cold, warm pot.
Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm. But again, a helicopter couldn't fly. So now I really couldn't believe it because now these kids are going to be spending their second night in the woods and survivability drops dramatically. Anybody can almost, we've seen a few that have died from hypothermia the first night, but the vast majority of our hikers have survived that first night. It can be really tough on them. But that second night survivability drops dramatically. So going into now that third operational period of the search, it's pretty dramatic. But we know we had covered all those drainages where I expected to find them. And the group of rangers that had been on the summit that next day, that second day, they had the same pea soup, whiteout stuff. They couldn't hear anything, couldn't see anything. So we put almost all of our resources on the summit for that third day, third operational period. And we're in a grid pattern, basically people to your left and right, 20, 30 feet apart, and just started going around. And the helicopter still couldn't fly, but the weather got a little better, so a helicopter was flying into the Lake Holden outpost to drop off more rescuers, more searchers. And part of the search pattern is that you walk for a little bit, you're looking for things, and you stop and you yell. Mm-hmm. It's really how you find them in that environment. And you do that maybe every minute or so, but you don't have a stopwatch on. It's not like, okay, it's been 60 seconds, time to yell again. It's just kind of like, okay, I have to walk, I've taken a few steps. Hey, hold on, let's yell. Well, what happened was that helicopter was flying below us, and the missing couple heard that helicopter, first helicopter they've heard in 2 days, and they yelled for the helicopter. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden we heard a woman's voice, and I looked at the searcher to my left. Did you hear that? Yeah, I heard that. We yelled back to them, and they're ecstatic to us. And they were still a couple 100 yards downhill from us, and we went down to them, and they were in rough shape. She couldn't really move anymore, but again, they were shivering, which was a really good sign. Mm-hmm. So we got them in our sleeping bags, but the weather was so bad. Like I said, the helicopter couldn't fly up to us; it could only fly in the valley. So it's going to involve a whole nother rescue team to get them out because they can't walk. Like they're not going to be able to walk. So now it's two people. It's two rescue sleds. So it's another 40 or 50 rangers and other rescue volunteers coming in. So I kept calling down to that helicopter. If you get a break in the weather, please make a shot at this. We'll have them harnessed up. They're going to be ready. Give it a go. And that helicopter kept coming up. And I'd hear it, but I couldn't see it. Then they turn around. And to this day, I've wondered, did I put too much pressure on that pilot? It's always the pilot's no-go. It's their decision, go or not go. But I wonder, was he hearing in my voice? Was I putting too much pressure on him? Because he kept trying. And eventually, he made it up to me. And if people are listening to this, they can go online. If you probably just go to Google and type in, winter rescue Algonquin Adirondacks, you'll get to see this video. And there's about a 20-second video of hauling in the second hiker onto the helicopter, and it's pretty stark. You can see how bad the visibility is. The helicopter the tail is dropping and the nose is dropping. 8 feet.
I heard that on the
Did I tell that story?
podcast, yes. The guys,
I don't know if I
you're like 10 feet, 10 feet. The guys, I thought it was 8. I'm good. I got 8. Or I can't remember what you said, but it was like that.
So I always wondered if we pushed that.
Yeah.
The pilot too much, but we got him out of there. And the greatest irony of that is
what?
An hour later, bluebird skies.
Fuck.
The weather was perfect after. And I just couldn't imagine, my God, what would happen if that helicopter crashed? And we killed 4 people trying to get those kids out. And an hour later, the skies were perfect.
So what would have happened if the helicopter couldn't have done it?
Well, we did have a rescue team on the way up, but it probably would have been another 10 hours to get them out.
Really
so you could see why, the urgency was there. Because when the helicopter came, I had him in the hospital in 10 minutes.
Wow.
Once the helicopter picked up, they're in the hospital in 10 minutes.
Wow.
Whereas I would have had 10 hours to get them to a hospital.
Yeah, because you can just fly, whether it's Lake Placid or Saranac Lake.
Exactly.
Just land on the roof of the medical center, and it's no problem now.
Yeah.
Warm them up. Because and this is one where I think was in the fall. There was a young man. He didn't end up making it, but came in, had basically he was backpacking, but it was wearing sandals and.
Oh, you're talking on Wallface.
Yeah,
yeah. That one was really tough on us. He was alive a long time in there, so he let's see, how do I talk about that one? Well, I'm just trying to, in my head here before I start talking to the microphone, I'm trying to think what is appropriate to say and
take your time.
Not give away, some of the information and be sensitive to the family. Because, this one involved a fatality, but basically it's someone who was a climber and had climbing experience, but they weren't really going in there to climb. They're going in to check out Wallface, if you will, But he stood out in everybody's mind because Wallface is, diagonal. It's so popular now. I mean, it's incredible. I used to see a few people a year that would climb that. Now on a busy weekend, it's a few people on the same route, So he was going in there, and as people were coming out, he was really standing out to them because he had sandals on, just looked so ill prepared. And trying to think how to tell the story. We didn't know he was in there, and we didn't know he was missing, and his family didn't know he was missing. He told his family he was going to a concert, like not for one night, but one of these
festivals.
Yeah, music festivals. So they didn't know he was missing for quite some time. So he had actually been lost in the woods for a week.
Oh, wow.
Before we were ever notified that he was missing. So you can imagine how difficult that made it do. So what we started to do was, we sent people in the woods right away, but we also started working on the register sheets, calling people who were in there when he was. Did you see this person? This is what he looked like. And as I was calling people, I'll never forget one of the people I called. I call him and say, "Hi, my name is Forest Ranger Van Laer. I'm calling from the Adirondacks. I saw you signed in at the Haws to do wall face on such and such a day." And the man goes, "No, oh no, you're not." And so he's saying that to me before I even explain what the situation is, because he knew what I was about to ask, because he saw the missing person. So it stood out in his mind. So I think he even thought about calling the Rangers when he got out to say, "Hey, I just saw this guy that made no sense. Didn't make any sense that he was there." So it was really registering with all the climbers and hikers who saw him. And that one guy in particular saw him at the campsite that's basically at the base of the route and talked to him. And he's like, "Oh, no, you can't climb this. This is so many pitches." And he's like, "Well, where's the climber's path? How do people come down?" He's like, "Well, it's over there, and you could bushwhack it this way. You can take the walk off if
but
up
almost
there."
everybody repels off that.
Right, exactly. And yeah, it's not a good walk off.
No, wall face is one that doesn't have any official trails to the top of it,
right?
Other than the climbing. And because I've done diagonal
this
before.
sounds like a class 5, not even a 4.
Oh no!
Oh no! Yeah, it's 5.
Yeah, it's 5'8" was diagonal.
Oh my god! All right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of how many pitches it is off the top of my head.
I think it's 8.
I think
it's 1,000 feet.
Yeah, it might even be more. Anyway, well, this hiker, he did bushwhack to the summit. He made it to the top, and we found where we were quite certain he had camped. So we found some of his stuff where he'd slept a night, and this. We got the search going, and we're searching the summit area. And this search went on for the better part of a week. And we even cut out a landing zone on top of the mountain, because talk about remote places to get to. Mm-hmm. So the last known point for him was basically on the summit. We could see where he camped. And some wicked bad weather came in, like hypothermia weather, 35 degrees Fahrenheit, pouring rain, inch or more of rain. And we knew that he had Tevas, a T-shirt, and shorts. So, and he'd been missing for a week before he even started. So we cleared a landing zone. We're bringing a helicopter in. We had searchers. We set up a base camp where rangers were camping in the woods so they could maximize their searching time. And we didn't find him for another week, and we found him deceased. And that one was tough for us because of, he was alive for considerable time. He did not, people a lot of times think they'll see someone on a trail, and even professional searchers. The reason we say to keep that positive attitude on all these incidents, because people do survive. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. We have found people that have survived 5, 6, 7 days, and this was really hard on us because we didn't get to them in time. And I'm not putting blame on myself or any of the other rangers, but. That one was tough for us to know that he was alive out there for a while we were searching him. And it's not the only story like this in the Adirondacks. Mm-hmm. There's, if you go through, you can see there's a very famous one in the 80s on the Northville Placid Trail, David Boomauer. And he lasted for weeks and weeks and weeks. People are tough. Humans are really tough. And he survived that hypothermia event, and he managed for days.
Yeah, because the big thing comes in is that I use these as kind of like illustrations for people. Number one, always have a check-in buddy, so that don't tell your parents you're going to a music festival, like, and it doesn't have to be your parents, like, but you need a check-in buddy where it's like, I'm going here. If you don't hear back from me by this time, call these people, right? So you always have that in place.
Yeah, that's crucial. And the things nowadays, one thing with it's not necessarily for that case in particular, but one thing with the outdoors is it's a draw for people who will want to harm themselves as well too. And that's one thing as a ranger that you have to deal with a lot is, we have suicides. People commit suicide. People who are despondent will go to the vistas and mountaintops. And, that's something we've had to deal with. And we get numerous ones, every year. And those are tough on us as well. But we work it's so important for us to find the person, whether they're alive or dead, because even if it's someone who did come here to do harm to themselves, it's so important to find closure for that family. There are people in the Adirondacks, there are people that were lost that we've never found. There's 5 or 6 people here in the High Peaks that, we're still looking for. We never stop. It may slow down and, we can do it here and there, but I've seen it from some of the families who have never had that closure, and it's extremely difficult for them. It's like the search goes on forever. They just never get an ending to it. And it does for us as well, too. Yeah,
because I guess the biggest thing, people, is like, have your check-in buddy. Get some sort of like, obviously your 10 essentials with you, even if it's a day hike. And whether it's Garmin or Spot, but like one of the satellite communicators, right? Because if you get in trouble, they're not relying on cell reception. It doesn't mean that you're going to get a ranger to where you are in like 15 minutes. It's not like, and 911 in the city.
But at least you'll know where you are too.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, it's much easier for them to get to you and help you if they know exactly where you are. Like, it's just rescue, not search. Mm-hmm. And so if you want to come down here in any wilderness area, not just here, but these are like really valuable things for people to keep in mind, right? Like, I think rangers should be there for if something goes wrong, right? As opposed to
bailing you out.
Yeah, bailing you out because you weren't prepared.
Yeah. We'll be there in the case, but you're right. I know that one was a bit more of a heavy story. If you want, I can end it. I can end it on probably the most humorous search and rescue incident I have.
Let's do that, and then we have our like final little
sure.
Rapid fire.
Yeah. Rapid fire. Okay.
Yeah.
So this was reported, so you've seen it elsewhere, but I don't know if I've told the story. But this is the most humorous search and rescue. It's a bit blue, so I will warn the audience a bit here. But
we have that explicit warning on the podcast.
Okay, so here it comes. So from southern Florida, there was this. I think they were even high school kids. They could have been college, but they came to New York City for an academic challenge. I think they were college kids. They came to New York City for this academic competition. So then they were down there for a few days, and they had one kind of older person that was guiding them around. Then they wanted to come see the Adirondacks. And these are 19, 20, 21-year-old kids from Miami area, never seen snow. And they're going in from Tahoe, so they're entering the High Peaks Wilderness from the south, and it's springtime, and they really struggle in there for a bit, and they even were seeing other hikers. They couldn't figure out how to even get back to their car, and they were at the Lake Holden Dam, and they talked to people. It's like, how do I get back? I'm a little confused. And they're like, you need to go turn around and go back that way. Well, some really bad weather came in, classic hypothermia weather, inch of rain, 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit weather again. I get to call the next day from the bed and breakfast they were staying at. They didn't come back. So I start searching in the next day. We got rangers. At this point, we're just hiking the trails. We're basically sweeping the trails. And sure enough, I see them coming down the trail towards me, and they're in pretty rough shape. They'd spent the night pretty rough, and I had a backpack full of clothes, and I dumped it all out because this is a group of 6 of them. Here you go. I put on all this clothes, and so they're putting clothes on, and I think it was 4 or 5 men and 1 woman, and they're getting all dressed. And, because they were in jeans and T-shirts, all sorts of cotton, terrible. And I remember thinking, boy, they're not really taking care of her very well because they're grabbing all the clothes herself. So she was to the point where she would just had the space blanket on herself, just walking down the trail, wrapped around her and walking down. So then the other ranger catches up to me, and we start walking out. We got several miles to get them out. And we're kind of surprised at what good a shape they are. We were wondering if they got into a lean-to or something, and these are young kids, and we're walking in the back. And the guys are kind of walking ahead, and we're just chit-chatting. And we said, boy, it was really cold. How did you manage to stay warm last night with that kind of weather? And she looks at us all serious, and she says, well, we peed on each other. And my eyes I just went like this, and my neck snapped, and I looked at the ranger to my right, and I couldn't believe it. And then just part of his little blue, and if the ranger, I won't say the ranger's name, but he said to me, he looks at her and he said, wow, golden shower, great idea.
Well,
and then she looks back and she goes, yeah, it did kind of keep us warm.
yeah. Like if you're already wet, it ain't gonna get you wetter.
So the ranger, so of course we were like, oh my God.
I've never heard of that.
And then you wonder why everybody smells like pee.
And she said something else. She goes, yeah, they probably won't admit it, but, and there's things that happened last night we'll probably never talk about, she says. So we start hiking out. And, of course, we can't wait to start telling all the other rangers and all the other people at the department of this story, And we're trying to keep it quiet so the public doesn't know about this. We don't want the public to know, but we don't want them to get embarrassed. Well, somehow the story made its way out. And it actually made it into the newspaper. And then they were getting so many press inquiries about this that our PR person actually had to come out with a statement that said, no, this is not a legitimate survival technique. Do not urinate on each other to stay warm.
It only works for jellyfish.
So that was the most humorous rescue I ever had.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and that's the thing. That's what we want to see is rescues, versus recoveries. But
yeah.
But it's one of those things where we can all learn, even if they don't have a happy ending. There's something we can all learn, so we don't end up that way.
I actually think those rescue reports are quite helpful. And the Adirondacks has a Facebook page, and people are constantly sharing information about what's going on. Just before you go somewhere, take it seriously.
Yeah, and check the DEC website for trail conditions. You'll have to scroll down to find the area, But especially if you're coming in winter, like it is no joke. You are far away from anybody. It's cold. The snow's deep. If it's on a main trail, it tends to get packed down pretty well. But the rest of it, like Catherine and I, just going because the lean-to we were originally going to was full, so we went like another 0.65 miles to the next one. And half of that 0.65 miles involved cutting fresh trail in 3 feet of snow.
Yeah.
It took us an hour and a half to go half a mile.
It's funny because I remember we looked out and I thought, oh, there's a whole lake in front of us. Let's stick to this way. And when I saw it in the morning, just because we made our way back, I'm like, what I thought I saw and what I actually did see are completely different things. So disorienting.
Yeah, going around the dark.
So rapid fire.
Rapid fire. All
so
right.
first, favorite snowshoes.
But lightning ascents, I got a new pair a few years ago. That's what I'm going with.
Well, and the thing comes in is like that would probably be the perfect snowshoe if they put like the boa adjustment on, like we have on our tubs.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because
those
you
are
have
nice.
3 straps on the top and 1 strap around the heel. I used to have a pair myself, and when they got to the point where the straps needed replaced, it was like I sold it to somebody and bought a pair of tubs. Because they're great snowshoes, and you can add the tails.
Yeah.
Right. Favorite peak to hike here?
Haystack.
It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
especially in the summer. In the summer, it going from Little Haystack over to Haystack, it's just that's a magical bit there.
Well, and it's the thing. It had been like I hadn't done it before, but a few years ago, I did Haystack from the backside. Jesus, who thought that was a trail? Like literally, like I'm grabbing roots at the side because it's just exposed slab. No holds, no nothing.
Yeah, that is super steep on that
Yeah,
side,
it's like I think he gained 2,000 feet in 1.2 kilometers.
Yeah, coming up from Panther Gorge.
Yeah.
That is.
Yep. And it is. It's like, and then once you're finally above the tree line, it's like, oh, you still got hundreds of feet to go to the summit.
Yeah, it's actually much better coming from the conventional, the standard way. That's nicer.
But the thing that is really cool with Haystack is it's right across Panther Gorge from Marcy.
Yeah.
So you can be sitting on there on a summer day and have nobody else on that summit, and you watch the fucking ants yes, across the valley, like, you know, just packing the summit of Marcy, and it's like, it sucks to be you, you know.
Yeah.
Now, fine, if somebody was selling tacos, maybe it would be better to be over there. But
Okay, so peaks. Which one do you like the least?
Ooh, that's really tough. The least.
I can tell you,
The one we were talking about today.
like my own that I hate.
All right, the peak I like the least. Well, all right, so I'll stick it just with the 46.
Yeah.
We'll stick just with that. I think my least favorite, I'll go with Phelps.
Oh,
Yeah.
why?
I don't like how eroded that one's gotten. And
I did notice that.
Yeah, that one's the erosion there is substantial. It does have a really nice open summit to it. Well,
when you get to it,
it's got a nice view to it. But I'm going to go with that one because it's a bit too easy to get to, and I feel like that one's even eroded more so than Cascade even.
Yeah, mine is Cuchicaraga or Couch. Yeah, because you make your way up into the Santanonis, and then you've got like this swamp slog, just to get to a summit that, you know, is just in the trees and it's not great views, and you end up covered in mud and mosquito bites. And
see, the Santanonis are not in my ranger district, so I've only done them once. So all the other 46 I've done many, many times. But Santanonis I've actually only done once. So maybe if I had done them more. But so yeah, you're right about that.
You know.
Because I didn't want to say street or nigh, you know, because people say there's no views on there. But there's an aspect of those mountains that I really like a lot.
yeah, like it's really just the
So yeah, I could see that.
So let's talk quickly about mountain biking.
Okay.
Best mountain bike areas in either Adirondack State Park as a whole, or just in the High Peaks area.
Yeah, I mean Wilmington's definitely the go-to place around here. There's a nice trail network off the Hardy Road, and what's called the Poor Man's Downhill from the Atmospheric Center is a really nice spot. And if you know, you can also pay to go to the Whiteface Ski Center if you're into the downhill stuff.
What about canoe routes?
Canoe routes. Let's see. I have done a 90 miler. I like the Essex chain. It's pretty small, but I like that. And then the St. Regis canoe area is still pretty prime. I also like doing some of the rivers. Mm-hmm. You know, but I'll go with those two primary canoe areas with the Essex chain and the St. Regis canoe area.
Yeah, because a lot of people, you know, hear Adirondack Mountains, they don't clue in to the fact that like there's lakes everywhere.
You know,
lakes
that's
and rivers.
Because historically, I think actually the canoeing was a bigger part of the Adirondacks than hiking. I think.
Here's a question, because the water is so cold. What's the warmest pond or lake?
The warmest pond
For me, it was Chapel Pond was pretty warm this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, where to go? Because I'll tell you, the one in Lake Placid that's not Lake Placid, is it?
Oh, no, what's
The
it?
beach?
Mirror Lake.
Yeah,
Mirror Lake.
Mirror Lake.
It's freaking cold.
The warmest ones I think are like Osita is really warm. So some of the stuff that's off the Saranac River, that's something with not as much springs. Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's not being fed by like snow melt from
Pretty
the mountains.
shallow too.
Yeah. Although that being said, Chapel Pond is fed by mountains melt.
There is some great swimming spots. Lake Clear Beach is really good. What I like finding is those swim holes on a hike. You know, at a high mountain brook.
Like
those are some of
High
my
Mountain
favorites.
Brook?
Yeah, like my favorite one is on Herbert Brook on Marshall. Really high on that. There's a really good pool there that's maybe 5 or 6 feet deep, but it's a really nice dip on a hot day, and it is frigid. And then the coldest one is right next to Lake Holden Outpost. It's called Cold Brook, aptly named, and that one. The hottest August day, I swear that water's still only 35 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah, because I've run into that. Like I've jumped into Lake Tear of the Clouds, and
there's not much of a lake left anymore.
Yeah.
It's so muddy.
You know, but there was enough. Like,
was there?
We
I've never
jumped
actually swam in.
Yeah, we jumped off a rock. Because it's a really rocky shore, and I hate being like, not that I hate being cold. I hate that shock of cold water, especially hitting my back. and I just cannonballed into it. It was like, yeah. It's like nothing worked. You're like all in rictus.
Yeah.
A second later you can swim around. But that it was
yeah.
a polar plunge in August. So let's wrap up with just sort of one final question.
Go ahead.
Outside of the actual high peaks, right? Like the 46er area, kind of bordered with like Keene Valley and Lake Placid. We did Hurricane, we did Baker. What would be the best non-high peaks that would fit into your hikes that you?
If you're looking for mountains, I think down by the Indian Lake area, there's snowy. There's some mountains down there that kind of fit that. The Jay Mountain Range, I would say, is still part of the greater high peaks, but that's pretty cool as well. I would say snowy down through there. And then for longer treks, the Northville Placid Trail is still a classic, and still highly recommend that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool how like you have it's like 115 miles or something like that.
Yeah.
Goes from Northville, New York to Lake Placid, New York. And it's like a baby through hiking trail.
Yeah, totally.
And somewhere down there, it actually crosses, I think, the Finger Lakes Trail. I was looking at like one of the maps of all the long trails.
I didn't even know that.
Because we actually, I've worked it out like from right near where we live. There's a trail, and it joins up with another trail, which actually goes to the border. So I actually worked out a hiking route to go from our house all the way to New York City on official trails.
Cool.
You cross the AT and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff like for, whether you're Canadian or a non-New Yorker, right? Like obviously the high peaks are amazing. But like there's a lot of stuff that in Adirondack State Park, right? Because when you look on a map, like with the area the high peaks actually take up, and then the rest of the park, like isn't it the largest park in Alaska?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's when I talk about ranger staffing. That's one of the things I bring up a lot. Like Yellowstone, much, much smaller, fewer visitors, and they have 330 full-time rangers, whereas the Adirondack Park only has 50. It's a pretty stark comparison.
Yeah, because it's like...
Does it make sense?
Yeah. And I think what it comes down to is when you drive like north of Albany... and you sort of get up in that Lake George area where it becomes officially the park. There's nobody at a ticket gate going,
right.
And that'll be $35 for the week.
So for us in Canada, and in Ontario, we were saying that everything's permitted. So for us to come here and see things are free and all the infrastructure, like, holy crap. Like, we really appreciate it. Do you get that sense from others? Like, or...
Yeah, I do. And that makes sense because I've seen such a... There's some studies, there's some data that back this up, but the percentage of our users now that are Canadian is going up a lot. Like it's always been a key part of our demographic, but that Clarkson University students their survey showed that it was a much larger percentage than ever before.
Well, it was funny because when we went in and the Gulfbrook Lean-To, we hit there, it was like a bunch of Canadians
from
McGill,
Montreal.
University in Montreal,
Yeah.
and like the other. Further up the hill, then the next lean-to is taken by a couple more Canadians.
I think probably a third of the users that I interact with are Canadian.
Yeah. Well, because think of it as like, it's 2 hours from Montreal. Like it's like the second or third biggest city in the country.
Although we keep running in those from our city.
Yeah.
Very quickly, what are some ways that visitors coming here can help out as far as, are there any volunteer groups? I know the Adirondack Lodge has a membership. I was a member of that. What else can we do?
I think the ADK is the best one for people who are particularly into hiking.
Gotcha.
So they do have an environmental component to it, but they are putting some things in place for volunteers to do things. And there are some other not-for-profits that deal with the park, like the Adirondack Council and Protect the Adirondacks. But for hiking community, I think ADK does the best job.
And given that a third of the visitors are from Canada, and you talked about contacting the governor about that we need more rangers here, can Canadians do that? Why
Social media
not?
Is available for anybody.
Seriously.
Yeah, I guess it's you're not
promote that.
You're not gonna get
You're not making campaign contributions.
Yeah, you're not, and you're maybe not doing an official petition, but
Well,
I mean, you're a visitor to the Adirondacks.
we're spending money here, so
You're a visitor to the Adirondacks, and you're explaining what you would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So I would think we'd want that information from our friends from the north as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. They're going to get annoyed with the whole campaign. We're going
to... Maybe Canadians are the ones that can finally break through and get us more rangers.
Well, because it's the thing. Como just did a big thing of like...
But snowmobiling.
He's really done an amazing job about bringing tourism to the Adirondacks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really impressive. But
like bring the tourists, but then you actually have to bring the this infrastructure to go along with it.
Yeah, it's like inviting people to dinner, but then running out of food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, Scott, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. This is fun.
And we'll take and share all your like social media things, at least for the next year until you retire. And then, it can be former ADK Ranger. And,
No, you're right. I got to figure out what to do with that.
What do you think
Twitter account when I retire.
Yeah.
I got another 18 months or so yet.
Do you have any plans? Aspirations?
I do want to hike the Appalachian Trail. That's definitely on my bucket list. I want to through hike on that. But I want to probably maybe wait till my kids go to college, which isn't, it's a ways, 5 or 6 years away. But that's definitely on my bucket list.
Yeah, because at least if they're up in college, dad's screwing off for 6 months.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like abandonment.
I don't think they care anymore at this point. They're teenagers, so they've really lost use for me anyway.
But. Yeah, because and it's the thing. If you do it, because I've done it in both directions, do northbound.
Yeah, I was planning on that.
Because it starts like tough but sucky and ends amazing. Right, because you end up Katahdin, like a 4,000 foot elevation change, and just you finish, the 100-mile woods just before that, and like there's so many of these awesome
pretty
bits
epic.
at the end, right? Whereas if you do it southbound after you go down Moosilauke, like my last time around, what got me off the trail, I literally finished the last of the good stuff, and fucked up my ankle, and basically the whole big mid-Atlantic section, I was going to have to do that, before I got hurt. And it's just boring as shit. It's only there because you got to connect these two places. So, yeah, if you get the northbound, that's the way to do it. You get great training, going through like Carolina and, Tennessee, like through the Smokies. And then you get kind of a bit of a break a little bit in Northern Virginia. And then Pennsylvania makes you experienced with rocks and Anyway, it's just so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So until next time, what are we doing, Catherine?
Work hard, play dirty.
See you guys.
Bye.